Psalm 23 from the NET Bible. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He takes me to lush pastures. He leads me to refreshing water. He restores my strength. He leads me down the right paths for the sake of his reputation. Even when I must walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff reassure me. You prepare a feast before me in plain sight of my enemies. You refresh my head with oil. My cup is completely full. Surely your goodness and faithfulness will pursue me all my days, and I will live in the Lord's house for the rest of my life. In studying this psalm, it must always be remembered that it is a sheep in the Good Shepherd's care who is speaking. It is essentially a Christian's claim of belonging in the family of God. As such, he boasts of the benefits of the relationship. This being the case, one might ask, why then this statement, "He restores my soul," or my strength? Many assume that anyone in the Good Shepherd's care could never become so distressed as to need restoration. But the fact remains that this does happen. Even David, the author of the psalm, who was much loved by God, knew what it was to be cast down and dejected. He had tasted defeat in his life, and he felt the frustration of having fallen under temptation. David was acquainted with the bitterness of feeling hopeless and without strength in himself. In Psalm 42:11, he cries out, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God." Now, there is an exact parallel to this in caring for sheep. Cast is a shepherd's term for a sheep that has turned over on its back, is waving its feet, but it cannot get up again by itself. A cast sheep is a pathetic sight. Lying on its back, its feet in the air, it flays frantically, trying to stand up without success. Sometimes it will bleed a little for help, but generally it lies there, lashing about in frightened frustration. If the owner does not arrive on the scene within a reasonable short time, the sheep will die. This is why it's so essential for a careful shepherd to look over his flock every day, counting them to see that all are able to be up and on their feet. If one or two are missing, often the first thought to flash into his mind is, "One of my sheep is cast somewhere. I must go and search and set it on its feet again." One particular ewe Keller owned was notorious for being a cast sheep. Every spring when she became heavy in lamb, it was not uncommon for her to become cast every second or third day. Only his diligence made it possible for her to survive from one season to the next. One year he had to be away from the ranch for a few days, just when she was having her problems. So he called his young son aside and told him he would be responsible for her well-being while he was absent. Every evening after school, the son went out to the fields faithfully and set up the old ewe so that she could survive. It was quite a task, but she rewarded them with a fine pair of twin lambs that spring. It is not only the shepherd who keeps a sharp eye for the cast sheep, but also the predators, buzzards, vultures, dogs, coyotes, and cougars. All know that a cast sheep is easy prey, and death is not far off. This knowledge that any cast sheep is helpless, close to death, and vulnerable to attack makes the whole problem of cast sheep serious for the manager. It is often the fat sheep that are the most easily cast. The way it happens is this: a fat, heavy, or long fleece sheep will lie down comfortably in some little hollow or depression in the ground. It may roll on its side slightly to stretch out or to relax. Suddenly, the center of gravity in the body shifts so that it turns on its back far enough that the feet no longer touch the ground. It may feel a sense of panic and start to paw frantically. Frequently, this makes the matter worse. It rolls over even farther. Now it is quite impossible for it to regain its feet. As it lies there struggling, gases begin to build up in the rumen. As these expand, they tend to retard and cut off blood circulation to extremities of the body, especially those legs. If the weather is very hot and sunny, a cast sheep can die within a few hours. If it's cool and cloudy and rainy, it may survive in this position for several days. If the cast sheep is a ewe with lambs, of course, it is a multiple loss to the owner. If the lambs are unborn, they too will perish with her. If they are young and suckling, they become orphans, all of which adds to the seriousness of the situation. Keller would go out early and merely cast his eye across the sky. If he saw the black-winged buzzards circling overhead in their long, slow spirals, anxiety would grip him. Leaving everything else, he would immediately go out into the rough pastures and count the flock to make sure that everyone was well and fit and able to be on its feet. This is part of the pageantry and drama depicted for us in the magnificent story of the 99 sheep with one stray. There is the shepherd's deep concern, his agonizing search, his longing to find the missing one, his delight in restoring it not only to its feet, but also to the flock and to himself. Again and again, he would spend hours searching for a single sheep that was missing. Then, more often than not, he would see at a distance, down on its back, lying helpless. At once, he would start to run toward it, hurrying as fast as he could, for every minute is critical. As soon as he reached the cast ewe, his very first impulse was to pick it up. Tenderly, he would roll the sheep to its side. This would relieve the pressures of gases in the rumen. She had been down for long. He would have to lift her to her feet. Then, straddling the sheep with his legs, he would hold her erect, rubbing her limbs to restore the circulation to her legs. This often took quite a little time. When the sheep started to walk again, she often stumbled, staggered, and collapsed in a heap once more. All the time he worked on the cast sheep, he would talk to it gently. When are you going to learn to stand on your own feet? I'm so glad I found you in time, you rascal. And so the conversation would go, always couched in language that combined tenderness and rebuke, compassion and correction. Little by little, the sheep would regain its equilibrium. It would start to walk steadily and surely. By and by, it would dash away to rejoin the others, set free from its fears and frustrations, given another chance to live a little longer. Restored. There is something intensely personal, intensely tender, intensely endearing, yet intensely fraught with danger in this picture. On the one hand, there is a sheep so helpless, so utterly immobilized, though otherwise strong, healthy, and flourishing, while on the other hand there is the attentive owner, quick and ready to come to its rescue, patient and tender and helpful. It is important to recognize that in the Christian life there is an exciting and comforting parallel here. Many people have the idea that when a child of God falls, when he is frustrated and helpless in a spiritual dilemma, God becomes disgusted, fed up, and even furious with him. That is simply not so. One of the great revelations of the heart of God given to us by Christ is that of himself as our shepherd. He has the same identical sensations of anxiety, concern, and compassion for cast men and women as Keller had for cast sheep. This is precisely why he looked on people with such pathos and compassion. Explains his magnanimous dealing with down-and-out individuals for whom even society had no use. It reveals why he wept over those who spurned his affection. It discloses the depth of his understanding of undone people to whom he came eagerly and quickly, ready to help, to save, to restore. When I read the life story of Jesus Christ and examine carefully his conduct in coping with human need, I see him again and again as a good shepherd picking up cast sheep. The tenderness, the love, the patience that he used to restore Peter's soul after the terrible tragedy of his temptations. It's a classic picture of Christ coming to restore one of his own. And so he comes quietly, gently, reassuring to me no matter when or where or how I may be cast down, as he does with you. In Psalm 56:13, we are given an accurate commentary on this aspect of the Christian life in these words. You have rescued me from death. You have kept my feet from slipping. So now I can walk in your presence, O God, in your life-giving light. We have to be realistic about the life of a child of God and face facts as they really are. Most of us, though we belong to Christ and desire to be under his control and endeavor to allow ourselves to be led by him, do on occasion find ourselves cast down. We discover that often when we are most sure of ourselves, we stumble and fall. Sometimes when we appear to be flourishing in our faith, we find ourselves in a situation of utter frustration and futility. Paul, in writing to the Christians at Corinth, warned them of this danger. If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. Chapter 10, verse 12. Admittedly, they may appear as one of the paradoxes and enigmas of our spiritual lives. When we examine it carefully, however, we will not find it too difficult to understand. As with sheep, so with Christians, some basic principles and parallels apply, which will help us to grasp the way in which a man or woman can be cast. There is, first of all, the idea of looking for a soft, comfortable spot. The sheep that choose the comfortable, soft, rounded hollows in the ground in which to lie down very often become cast. In such a situation, it is so easy to roll over onto their backs. In the Christian life, there is great danger in always looking for the easy place, the cozy corner, the comfortable position where there is no hardship, no need for endurance, no demand upon self-discipline. The time when we think we have it made, so to speak, is actually when we are in most danger. There is such a thing as a discipline of poverty and privation, which can be self-imposed to do us worlds of good. Jesus suggested this to the rich young man who mistakenly assumed that he was in a safe position when he was on the verge of being cast down. Sometimes, if through self-indulgence we are unwilling to forfeit or forego the soft life, the easy way, the cozy corner, then the Good Shepherd may well move us to a pasture where things aren't quite so comfortable, not only for our own good, but also for his benefit as well. Often when the fleece becomes very long and heavily matted with mud, manure, burrs, and other debris, it is much easier for a sheep to become cast, literally weighed down with its own wool. Wool in Scripture depicts the old self-life in the Christian. It is the outward expression of our inner attitude, the exertion of my own desire and hopes and aspirations. It's the area in our life through which we continually are in contact with the world around us. Here, the clinging accumulation of things, of possessions, of worldly ideas begin to weigh us down, to drag us down, to hold us down. It is significant that no high priest was ever allowed to wear wool when he entered into the Holy of Holies. This spoke of self, of pride, of personal preference, and God would not tolerate it. If we wish to go on walking with God and not be forever cast down, this is an aspect of our life which he must deal with drastically. Whenever Keller found that a sheep was being cast because it had too long and heavy a fleece, he soon took swift steps to remedy the situation. In short order, he would shear it clean and so forestall the danger of having the ewe lose her life. It reminds me of when I might have been 9 or 10, and my mother's cousin, who just died last month, came to shear my sister's sheep and laid it on its back so we could do the belly first. Sheep don't like to be on their back, just as I've been saying, and it flails, and then he turns it over and does the rest of it. Shearing is not easy for the sheep or for the shearer. Actually, when it is all over, both sheep and owner are relieved. There is no longer the threat of being cast down, while for the sheep there is the pleasure of being set free from that hot, heavy coat. What a relief to be rid of it all. And similarly, in dealing with our own self-life, there will come a day when the Master must take us in hand and apply the clean, cutting edge of his word to our lives. It may be an unpleasant business for a time. No doubt we'll struggle and we'll kick about. We may get a few cuts and wounds. But what a relief when it is over. The pleasure of being set free from ourselves. What a restoration. The third chief cause of cast sheep is simply that they are too fat. It's a well-known fact that overfat sheep are neither the most healthy nor the most productive. And certainly it is the fattest that most often are cast. Their weight simply makes it that much harder for them to be agile and nimble on their feet. Of course, once a sheepman even suspects that his sheep are becoming cast for this reason, he will take long-range steps to correct the problem. He will put the ewes on a more rigorous ration. They will get less grain, and the general condition of the whole flock will be watched very closely. It is his aim to see that the sheep are strong, sturdy, and energetic, not fat, flabby, and weak. Turning to the Christian life, we are confronted with the same sort of problem. Those who may have done well in business or their careers or their homes feel that they are flourishing and have arrived. They may have a sense of well-being and self-assurance, which in itself is dangerous. Often when we are most sure of ourselves, we are the most prone to fall flat. In his warning to the church in Revelation 3:17, God points out that though some considered themselves rich and affluent, they were actually in desperate danger. The same point was made by Jesus in his account of the wealthy farmer who had intended to build more and bigger barns, but who in fact faced utter ruin. Material success is no measure of spiritual health, nor is apparent affluence any criteria of real godliness. And it is well for us that a shepherd of our souls see through this exterior and take steps to set things right. He may well impose us some sort of diet or discipline, which we might find a bit rough and unpalatable at first. But again, we need to reassure ourselves that it is for our own good, because he is fond of us, and for his reputation as the good shepherd. In Hebrews 12, we read how God chooses to discipline those he loves. At a time, it may prove a tough routine, but the deeper truth is that afterward it produces a life of repose and tranquility, free from the fret and frustration of being cast down like a helpless sheep. The toughness it takes to face life and formidable reverses which it brings to us can come only through the discipline of endurance and hardship. In his mercy and love, our Master makes this a part of our program. It is part of the price of belonging to him. We may rest assured that he will never expect us or ask us to face more than we can stand. But what he does expose us to will strengthen and fortify our faith and confidence in his control. If he is the Good Shepherd, we can rest assured that he knows what he is doing. This in and of itself should be sufficient to continually refresh and restore our soul. I know of nothing which so quiets and enlivens our spiritual life as the knowledge that God knows what he is doing with us.